this old belief that you don't talk about religion, politics, or money. Those are the things that you stay away from at a dinner party conversation. But like money is something that we all need to survive. And whether you have a lot of it or a little of it, it's still things that you need to know what you're doing with it and how you can use it to your best advantage and all that sort of thing, which I think is where that stereotype comes in of like women aren't good with money because we were never part of the conversations. Like we were never allowed to be.
Welcome to The Scaries, brought to you by RaiseHER Co. I'm Sky.
And I'm Talitha. We are proudly broadcasting from Treaty 4 territory, and in each episode we tackle the alarming, inconceivable, questionable, shocking, and scary statistics relating to, impacting, and intervening with the lives of women and girls worldwide.
You'll hear the scary truth, take away tools and tips, and learn about what you can do about it. And really, The Scaries is an opportunity to raise awareness, share resources, and use our voices as women and supporters of women to make some real change. As always, the opinions and views shared in this podcast are solely our own and for entertainment purposes only. And we may be sharing some statistics or some facts that could be triggering, so please listen with caution.
As straight, cisgender, white, able-bodied settler women, we are very aware of our privilege, and we want to use this platform to spread awareness about the scary reality that women from around the world face in different life situations.
Why?
Because sometimes nothing is scarier than being a woman. What is up? We are here with another episode highlighting the work of a dynamic duo in the She's Here mentorship program. And if you don't know what that is, you can listen to Identity Crisis, Uncovering the Truth About Imposter Syndrome. And in that episode, we chatted about the work from one group that focused on the prevalence of the imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon in women. And we highly recommend you check that out first, because that also sets the stage for a little bit about what this program is, what is She's Here. We're not going to keep saying it over and over and over again. So please go back and listen to that one. But today we are very excited to have another mentorship duo here who will chat about the findings from their project focused on women in finance and the existing barriers.
I'm super glad that they broached that specific topic, because there are so many and continuing stereotypes out there that are harmful and really just unconscious that are around women and money and financial literacy. Exactly. And then not to mention all the things that have impacted and been soaked into us as we've gone through our lives, so that then impact the stats on women in the financial industry as a result. So we want to share some of those stereotypes and actually debunk some of the myths around women in finance and what exists there, and shed some light on what's actually happening in reality. So we're going to go through a couple of the key stereotypes that are out there and what the facts are. So first, the stereotype that women spend more money than men.
So I feel like my husband, are you listening to this? You should listen to this.
So our research shows that single men typically fork out around $2,000 more every year compared to single girls. So why does the stereotype of women as a big spender exist? Well, it's largely due to the movies and TV shows, the media, the good old media, always screwing us.
Ruin it for everybody.
I'm telling you. Female characters are always portrayed as shopaholics or the wealthy heiress, reinforcing the stereotype that we're just like frivolous with money. And you know,
we all wanted to be Cher Horowitz from Clueless, but we're not.
Oh, yes. But when it comes to what men and women spend their money on, those are where the real differences take place. While there are gender-specific spending patterns, and we won't get into those too deeply, women actually don't outspend men on average. So there you go. That is not true.
Proven wrong.
Exactly. Another one is that women are more impulsive about their purchases than men, so can't be trusted with money, right? So the term impulsive is also very subjective. It's hard to define. And whenever there's research on it, it's very much like self-reported on what exactly you're impulsing buying on. Right. So it's a little bit harder to measure, but there's two key things that our research tells us. Number one, women tend to make more impulse purchases than men. However, men tend to spend more money on each impulse purchase compared to women. So women are making the like aisle purchases of like the hair things and all the random little gum and things like, oh, my kid needs that, and why not? special treat for myself. But men are more likely like, oh, I really just want that car. I'm going to buy it. Or that motorcycle or those like that new TV or whatever, right? Like those big things. So there's a difference there. And I think clearly a bigger difference to your pocket at the end of the day on those types of purchases.
Like $2,000 more a year, I would
say. Exactly. So like I said, women make smaller, more frequent spontaneous purchases, especially when they shop online. And that obviously can compile up to make a bigger impact at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, men make those big impulse purchases, not as often, but they make the big ticket item purchases that can make you bankrupt at the end of the day.
I mean, like, I'm an absolute sucker if I'm online shopping and, you know, like shipping is $20 and they're like, but what about this thing? I'm like, well, obviously I'm going to get that thing and then I don't need to spend $20 on shipping and so I have another thing.
Right. Totally.
It's called logic.
So exactly. So even though women make more of these spontaneous purchases, the total amount they spend is usually actually less than what men would spend on one big impulse buy.
Love it. We are vindicated once again. So the last stereotype that we're going to look at is that women are less likely to invest their money than men are. So this stereotype is another complex one. It seems true at first glance. And I feel like even if we were to just talk to our friend group, that likely is probably true. But there's more to it than meets the eye. So research generally agrees on two main points about women and investing. So the first is that overall fewer women invest in the stock market compared to men. So it's at 48% for women versus 66% for men. The second point is that when women do invest, they tend to make more money proportionately from those investments than men do on average.
Interesting. So we're better at investing? Is that what you're saying?
At this. So some articles simplify this by saying women are simply better investors than men, but it's not that simple. Researchers, sorry. I just like, burst your bubble. Researchers actually often say things like women invest more cautiously and or are more selective about their investments. The law of averages plays a role here too. While men might have more big wins with their investments because of those like aggressive type investing, they might also have more big losses.
Right.
Even though women, even though women might make less money in a given quarter than men. So again, just being a little bit more conservative generally, they often come out ahead when we look at the performance over years or decades.
What gets me on that is that, women are more risk averse. You think about applying for jobs and all these things, we're more risk averse, but because we're always thinking about other people and the impact that our money has on our families and our kids, and we can't afford to lose all our life's work in the stock market because we have kids to feed.
Exactly. Yeah. So, or like people to take care of.
Right.
Or,
so there's a reason why we're more risk averse, and men think that way too. But I think when you compare that notion of line of thinking, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, no, I think it's just like ingrained in brains.
Yeah.
The fact that women typically earn 82% of what men do might also affect how they invest. This pay and wealth gap is well documented. As we know, that 89 cents to the dollar, it makes sense that it would influence financial decisions. So women often have less money to invest overall, so they might be less likely to put it into high risk investments or even invest at all. Plus, there's a lack of education for women about investing, which leads many to underestimate their own financial abilities. Whatever the reasons behind these trends, the main point remains. Women are less likely to invest traditionally, although this has shifted somewhat during the COVID pandemic. But when they do, they often do well compared to men. So what is the impact of these stereotypes? Why do we even care?
Which are completely wrong.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
They're wrong. Stereotypes. That's exactly what they are for a reason. So growing up with beliefs like these can lead to a harmful cycle. For instance, a study from 2017 at Drake University found that women performed worse on tests if they were reminded of ideas about femininity and money. Similarly, a 2021 study showed that the stereotype that women aren't good with money made women more anxious about finances, which worsened the gender gap in financial knowledge. So many women start to believe they're naturally bad with money. It like just is that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right?
This only makes the stereotype stronger and creates a chain reaction. Women feel less confident about money, avoid learning about finances, and end up feeling even less confident. Like, you see where we're going with this.
Oh my goodness, I tell you.
Can't get rid of it. Now that we've debunked these stereotypes, let's dig deeper into the challenges women in finance face today.
Alrighty. So According to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report, female talent in the finance industry still remains one of the most untapped business resources. So while women make up more than half of the entry-level positions workforce in the United States, only about 6% of the top public financial institutions have women in senior positions.
That's a very small percentage.
That is so small.
Yeah.
This stark reality that women are less represented as they progress up the career ladder, resulting in significant inequity at the top, is known as the broken rung effect.
Tell me more about that.
Yes, I shall. So consistent with previous years, women in financial services continue to experience this broken rung, where at the first step from entry level to manager, they're significantly less likely than men to be promoted. So they can't get over that hurdle from entry level into that senior level management. At the same time, women who have progressed into these manager roles have taken on additional responsibilities, most of them unpaid, probably all of them unpaid, of supporting employees, investing in diversity and inclusion, taking notes, planning all the parties, doing the social committee, But they aren't being But they aren't being rewarded or, recognized for those things that actually do make a big difference to culture and employee engagement and all of those things, retention, so many things.
Yeah.
So as demands continue to escalate, it is no surprise that women in the financial services industry are more likely than men to report feeling burnt out. Yet women do not always feel that they can request the support they need. It's a vicious cycle again, including the flexibility to work remotely. Thus, more women do not want to move into those senior level roles. So it's a whole thing. It's a whole cycle.
Yeah.
So women are entering the financial industry, like we said, at equitable rates to men. We're working, we're getting our degrees in a higher rate than men, actually. Yeah. But why aren't we progressing in the financial sector and leading the charge?
Well, that's a great question. And of course, we've uncovered a few reasons in our research. So reason number one is the scarcity of mentors and role models. So mentorship. See where we're going with this? Many women in finance lament the absence of mentors or role models as a significant hurdle to advancing their careers. And surprise, surprise here, but studies indicate that mentoring programs can substantially increase minority representation in managerial positions. Female mentors play a crucial role in guiding mentees through corporate challenges, imparting skills like emotional intelligence and effective networking. Crazy how mentoring works.
Right?
Reason number two, and balancing work and family life. We hear this in every single sector. But a prevalent belief persists that women in finance struggle to achieve the same work-life balance as their male counterparts. Juggling career demands with family responsibilities can be overwhelming, particularly for working mothers. However, shifts are occurring as men increasingly share household responsibilities, gradually easing the burden on women in finance. However, I would like to see the real numbers in that.
Exactly.
Because
the gradual burden being removed.
1% every 7 decades. Reason number three is the perceived intensity of competition. So some women perceive finance and accounting fields as excessively competitive, leading them to doubt their capabilities and shy away from pursuing executive roles. However, the landscape is evolving with greater opportunities emerging for women in finance. Major financial institutions like HSBC and JP Morgan Chase & Co. have demonstrated commitment to elevating women into senior positions, signaling a changing tide in the industry. I think most significantly, and not just in the financial sector, but overall, that we are slowly breaking down this belief that there can only be one.
Yes, please.
There's only one spot at the executive table. Therefore, women have to compete against each other. And again, these cycles, this vicious cycle of we have space, but for one. No, that's not the case.
Totally. And even that one that's up there, it's like, you're the only one. So you're silenced, you're not, fully heard. And then the big change takes so long to happen. So we need more women. Come on.
Women. Make it equitable.
And men, let's support those women. So where does that leave us now? And what can we expect to see in the future for women and the next generation of girls getting into those careers? So we're going to have some rapid fire statistics today because there's a lot of them. So first, let's look at how women are navigating their finances in general. And we kind of talked about some of the stereotypes, but these debunk those continually. So according to a 2021 report from Fidelity, 67% of women are now investing outside of retirement, which is a huge increase of 23% since 2018.
That's great.
So 60, so more than half. That's great. In addition, while only 9% of women think that they make better investments than men, women's portfolios actually perform 0.4% better than men's on average. Hello.
Hey.
So that might not sound like much, but when adjusted for the effects of compound interest, the difference can really add up. Though women tend to invest smarter than men, overall they invest less, like we chatted about at the beginning. So a study from BNY Mellon states that if women were to invest as much as men, assets under management would increase by a staggering $3.22 billion worldwide.
Oh, we got that money to spend.
Yes, seriously. And we would be making so much if we just invested the same.
Yeah.
Interesting. Not only are women investing more often now, they're also acquiring more wealth. This is largely due to a steady increase in the number of women entrepreneurs and women in upper management roles across various sectors.
Right.
In 2022, the number of director roles held by women on boards of the S&P 500 rose to 32%, which is the highest percentage to date.
Wow.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah.
A third of the world's total wealth is now owned by women. 1/3. Not quite there, but close. Getting there. And women are adding $5 trillion to the global wealth pool annually, outpacing the growth of the wealth market overall.
Hey.
So there are some lights at the end of the tunnel.
Totally.
As the barriers to entry are eroded, many women are now able to navigate and manage their finances better than ever before. But still, it's important to note that women of color, as usual in all of these stats that we say in every episode pretty much, there's always more barriers to financial independence than white women.
Yeah, always.
An increasing number of resources are cropping up that speak about financial empowerment of non-white women and women of color, but even more representation and support are needed in this area.
Right.
So then when we look at female representation in specifically the financial industry in roles, in 2021, globally within the financial service institutions, women held 21% of board seats, 19% of C-suite kind of executive level roles, and only 5% of CEO positions. Wow. Globally, 5%. That is crazy. And we make up half of the population, but we make 5% of the CEO. Boggles my mind. Women make up 46%, so not quite half of all workers at all levels in the North American financial services industry. So regardless of the area or sector, 46%, which is partly due to the traditional gender roles and perceptions of the industry. Less than 17% of senior positions in investment banking in North America are held by women, reflecting biases in leadership assessment. Only 2% of assets and mutual funds in North America are exclusively managed by women, with barriers including limited finance backgrounds and just gender discrimination. And finally, women in banking and finance in North America have 25% lower level of confidence in their financial competence compared to men, which is often attributed to disparities in educational attainment and representation in top financial roles.
Great. So I feel like there was there it is.
Yeah.
we went
back
up
down. And we went down.
Came back down. Well, interestingly, female representation actually varies significantly by sector within the financial industry too. A report published by McKinsey & Company on closing the gender and race gaps in North American financial services looked at 4 main industry segments and the different experiences for women today. The first segment is asset management. The asset management industry lags behind financial services in the representation of women across most levels. Of particular concern is that the representation of women of color has not meaningfully changed since 2018 and has actually gone down at critical levels of the pipeline. Yeah. So for example, the share of women in color in entry-level roles has decreased in the past 3 years. The second segment is banking. So gender diversity in banking reflects the reality in financial services overall. So I think banking is just that kind of like general, probably where it captures most women is like that, those tellers and that sort of thing. Within banking, there is an even split between men and women at entry level that declines with each rung up the ladder. So women make up 53% of all the entry level banking workforce, but less than 1/3 at the senior vice president and C-suite levels. Notably, nearly 1 in 4 employees at the entry level is a woman of color, though this falls to 1 in 20 at the C-suite level. on par with both the financial services and the cross-industry average. The third segment is insurance, which continues to lead in gender diversity within the entry-level workforce, where 66% are women, though these women are predominantly white. The high share of women at entry level is mostly due to the larger, more diverse workforces of call centers and field claims organizations employed by the insurance industry. Black women comprise more than 7% of the entry-level workforce, the highest among financial service industries. However, this number, again, drops significantly along the corporate ladder and falls to 0 at the C-suite.
Man.
And finally, the last, I know, it's just nonstop good news. And finally, the last segment is payments. And truthfully, I had no idea what this was before. But essentially, it's like debit, credit, anything with like physically using cards. Yeah. So within the payments industry, gender diversity varies significantly by job level. So payments has the lowest share of women in the entry level, manager, and senior manager ranks. And among the financial services industry is the closest to gender parity in the C-suite, where 39% are women. Women of color make up 9% of the C-suite in the payments industry, the highest representation among all financial service industries. So obviously there is some work to be done. Finance is not an outlier when it comes to the representation of women. Still, like every aspect of the work that we discuss on this podcast, it takes dedication to make significant contributions and move toward parity, which is where our guests for today's episode come in.
So allow me to introduce you to Dajana and Pall. So Dajana is a devoted mother of 2, currently enjoying her maternity leave. She's got a background in managing retail stores in the fashion industry, and she made a significant shift into the financial services sector a decade ago. Presently, she holds a leadership role with Connexus Credit Union, and she guides a team of financial advisors and oversees their efforts in providing valuable financial advice. Dajana's partner in this project is Pall Agarwal. Pall is a student at the University of Regina, and she juggles multiple roles, and I mean multiple, with ease. She's originally from India, and she moved to Canada at 19 to pursue studies in finance and economics. In her second year, currently, she serves as an ambassador, leader, and VP of marketing for Enactus, while also participating in clubs like Economic Student Association and others. Beyond campus, she's a board member with Saskatchewan Young Professionals and Entrepreneurs and an associate member at the Rotary Club of Regina's Eastview, and supports the Lakeview Community Association. Just goes on and on and on. To finance her education, Pall works various jobs as well, including office administrator at PSC, postal clerk at Canada Post, London Drugs, writer at the Carillion, and a teaching assistant for the business classes at U of R. She embraces life's adventures and takes each day as it comes. So welcome, ladies.
Welcome. Just laughing because you're so busy, Pal, but thank you for making time. I mean, I know that you're very busy as a mom as well. Not quite that busy. Not just counting that. It's very different.
Very different.
So starting off with some rapid fire. Dajana, first, I'm going to put you on the spot. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
A couple of years ago, I received a journal from one of my previous leaders as a Christmas gift. And on the front of this journal, there's a quote, and it says something like, "Whatever you can do or dream, begin it. Boldness has power and magic to it." Ooh. So it's this idea of don't necessarily wait to have all the details figured out, but start off, just take action and kind of figure it out as you go.
Just do it.
That perfectionism is like such a crutch sometimes. And like for me anyways, especially I'm like, ooh, it stops me in so many ways.
Unless you have every single thing pointed out, you don't want to start.
Exactly.
But I think, so it's cool because I write in this journal every day, and just seeing that quote kind of
reminds you.
Yeah, it's a good mantra.
I like boldness too. That's a magic. It gives me
it's very inspiring.
Yes.
No wonder it's on the front of a journal. Yeah. Pal, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think the best piece of advice that I've ever received was when someone told me to increase your luck surface area wherever you go. And by that, it means that to put yourself into those spaces and those hallways or like those rooms where you can get opportunities that get you closer to the goal that you want to achieve. So it just helps you So that is how you are increasing your luck surface area. Luck, by which means you are accessing those opportunities and just getting those chances so that you can be closer to where you want to go.
It's hard to like put yourself out there and network, which I know is your favorite word and your middle name. Yeah.
That's how I like to put it.
Okay, great. So the second one then I'll ask you, Pal, is if you could grant women one gift, what would it be?
I think the one gift would be just like the power of confidence. That would be the biggest gift I think I could grant. And that is very, very important. I think women have a lot of potential and a lot of capabilities, which they tend to overlook and ignore at all times. At all times, yes. So that would be, I think, the biggest gift, which is like the power of confidence.
Amazing. And what about you, Dajana? What would be the gift?
For me, it's the ability to be concise and to be assertive, because I think as women, we naturally dilute ourselves and we water down our opinions. And this is something that I always get feedback on. Like, I'll always start off with being like, I'm sure you guys have heard this idea before and you've run through this, but this is what I'm thinking, and just kind of diluting what I have to say before I ever say it. And it kind of takes away that confidence. And I think, in maybe professional settings, I rein it back in fear of becoming or coming across as too strong. And with my relationships with people I'm comfortable with, I'm like the complete opposite. Like, I say exactly what I think. Yeah. The thing that I would give women would be the ability to be assertive and to be concise and confident.
All go hand in hand.
They absolutely do. Okay, last one. And I think our favorite question of all of them is, what is your scary?
I think my scary is just not knowing where your money is going. I think that's one of the things that scares me the most, when you're not aware of what you have, where everything is going. Maybe it's more that explains why I'm such a control freak. But that's one of my biggest scary, is not knowing where my money is or where my things are.
Okay, Dajana, what is your scary?
I think for me, it's like the idea of becoming really stagnant. And as you stay in a role or stay in leadership specifically for a long time, I feel like I've seen that happen. And it's impacted me and like my career growth, when my direct leader doesn't want to try new things and doesn't want to, experiment or whatever that looks like. So for me, I have this, and I've always had this fear that one day I'm going to just become jaded. Jaded. Exactly. Stuck in my ways. I don't want to hear it. Like, I've tried that 100 times, doesn't work. Right. So just, that fixed mindset is what scares me.
It is scary. I think it's just scary to not continuously evolve and change. Natalia Mason had said that her favorite thing to say is that she is a living contradiction, and that she can always be changing and always be evolving. And that's the point. And I think like Natalia said it because someone else very famous said it as well. I can't remember who it is, but it's like that you're allowed to be in a living contradiction. Like, you're allowed to like contradict yourself and like change. And that's the beauty of it.
I know. I think it was someone on my team in the past used to say like, let's avoid Sally, like same as last year. So it's like, no Sally's here. Like, we have to try something new.
I like that. Yeah. Poor people named Sally. Poor Sally. We're not invited here.
So let's get into the questions. So, Pal, first, can you elaborate on some of the gender disparities that exist in the financial industry and underrepresentation and pay gaps that exist for women?
According to a Catalyst report, I found that for every dollar that men make, women make only 89 cents, which was interesting. And moving further in the financial industry, there is a lot of underrepresentation of women, especially in the senior executive positions and leadership roles. For example, in roles like investment banking, I noticed that there were less than 17% of women in senior executive positions. Moving on to, I think, private equity, there was only less than 9%. And in hedge funds, there was the entire female population was around only 11%. I do understand that those roles are quite strenuous, but yet again, the numbers speak highly of what the industry looks like and what needs to be done to make it better.
I think that like really sets the stage for the fact that you said that those jobs are strenuous and that they're, I would say, like quote unquote hard, but it's just because we're women, we can't do hard things. Like, I think, I'm not saying that that's what you're saying. I'm just like, that's just, I think the mentality is that like women can't do hard things. So like that's why they're not allowed to be in these things.
Those
So
stereotypes.
yeah,
Honestly, they're self-deprecating. Like you get into your mind, right?
Yeah.
And then you don't think that. So
exactly.
and
Yeah.
others do too.
Diana, can you discuss then any specific challenges or barriers that women commonly face in the finance industry and how they impact the overall financial landscape and like finance industry landscape?
I think maybe there's two parts to this, and I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel, at least in banking. I can't speak for necessarily, private equity and all that.
Right.
But I think, when I started about 10 years ago, we had an all male senior leadership, no female, white male, that was it, right? And I think the landscape in that aspect has definitely changed, and we are seeing a lot more female leadership coming through. But again, to go back to your question, I think, of course, like any sector, banking has its challenges, as in, work interruption, maternity leaves, those, like you just said, stereotypes of, okay, the kid's sick, who's going to be the one to stay home? It's going to be the mom. And that takes you away from just experiences. It takes away maybe, how you're perceived and how, bought into your job you are. So I think in those senses, it definitely holds us back. And then again, like that glass ceiling, right, I think still exists. And maybe that's just a byproduct of not being able to fully maybe, immerse yourself in your job. But I think much like every other sector, we face those same things. I do see a light at the end of the tunnel. I do see far more women, showing up and also setting that example for us to be like, well, she did it. I could maybe connect with her and see how did she get there? Right?
Yeah,
totally.
It's definitely that strength in numbers thing as people start to become more comfortable. And I mean, there always has to be one. There always has to be the person who starts to lead the change and is that catalyst, knock the dominoes over kind of thing. But it also helps to see that if you can see it, you can be it, whole mentality. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, the idea is basically like, if she can do it, so can I. And that really motivates everyone. Like, for example, when I talk to Dajana, I'm like, okay, if she can, so can I, right? Like, there's nothing that's stopping us.
Yeah. Well, and even just like men have been doing it for years in terms of always hiring and promoting people who looked and are going to believe and agree with things that they do. So I'm hoping that women do the same and pull more women up with them, right? So it's just going to exponentially grow as we see more and more women in leadership.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I've seen happen in the past is women get a little jaded. I've had a friend of mine who just switched jobs because of like a 15-minute, daycare pickup thing that just wasn't working out. And,
oh my God.
And I think a lot of times it comes down to like, well, this wasn't available for me and I had to make do and I had to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's definitely in the generation that we're in, we're still going to feel it even from other women,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's definitely that mean girl mentality.
Yeah.
And there's only spot for one. And I work so hard and, especially different generational impacts where you're sometimes leading people who are 20 years older than you or, the other way around and they don't like there's a whole thing for sure.
Yeah, we do education on this a lot. I think so many times people are like, oh, well, we're talking about gender equity and gender diversity and all of these things. And so everyone is on the same page that women should, be X, Y, and Z. And here's whatever it is. But like sometimes it's the women at the top who are the biggest barriers because of those exact reasons that they're like, well, I was in the all men club and like I had to fight the boys club and I was sexually assaulted and I was all of these things, it's just you're paying your dues. And it's like, no, that's actually not how we make progress. So it's definitely fighting those like generational barriers as well.
So next question goes to you, Pal. Why do you believe it's crucial to empower and educate girls about the financial world?
There are lots of reasons. Personally, to me, I feel it's important to educate young women and girls about money in general or finance is, well, at some point of time, you are going to actively deal with it. Maybe if you're starting to work, you're earning. So you should know how much you're getting, how much you should save, how much you should invest, or maybe like just save up for your future. And eventually, we don't consider, but what is someone very close to you passes away, like if your partner is not there with you anymore, how do you deal with the amount of money that you have? What if you get separated? And how do you deal with that sort of a change? So it's very important to know how that sort of a thing works around. And second is, why not? So that is also like, it's just a knowledge that is very important. It's very relevant in day-to-day life.
It's like what you said at the beginning with your scary, like you need to know where your money's going. You need to know, and you should be aware for your own independence and for your own health, really. So that's goes hand in hand with what you said.
Well, and there's this, I don't want to say like old wives' tale, this old belief that you don't talk about religion, politics, or money. Those are the things that you stay away from at a dinner party conversation or, in public or with friends and that kind of thing. Okay, maybe religion and politics, sure. But like money is something that we all need to survive. And whether you have a lot of it or a little of it, it's still things that you need to know what you're doing with it and how you can use it to your best advantage and all that sort of thing, which I think is where that stereotype comes in of like women aren't good with money because we were never part of the conversations. Like we were never allowed to be. So with that, Dajana, can you tell us a little bit about the project that you guys worked on and why you decided to focus on this?
As Pall just mentioned, women are still highly underrepresented in the finance world. And, I spoke to what it's like in banking, but that's definitely not what it's like in a lot of the other sectors of it. So when we got together, initially we started talking about this and that came out like the finance, passion for finance came out right away between us and the ability to educate women. And so one of the things, and Pall, honestly, this was her fiery brainchild that she came up with. And it's true, you have these students attending the University of Regina, they don't know what they don't know, right? Like they don't know that there's all of these other aspects. They know, okay, I can go into marketing, I can go into HR, I can go into whatever that looks like in business, but there isn't necessarily a wide variety of resources out there to fill that gap between student and professional. So that was kind of the brainchild behind WIFE, and Pall named it. We loved it.
So WIFE stands for
Women in Finance and Equity.
Yes. Love it.
So good.
We're all wives.
But the idea kind of behind it is to get some professional women in front of some students that can get that conversation going around what is your job? What do you do? How did you get into it? What are some barriers you faced? And then, how can that help me overcome those barriers and get into a job like yours, right? So creating that mentorship, and we talked a lot about intergenerational, and I think that's kind of what we aim to tackle with this. I would also say we wanted to do start off with a panel, but it can really evolve into whatever the need is, right? What kind of the students want.
Yeah, that was the entire idea of Women in Finance and Equity, which is WIFE, is just to get the conversation around different roles in finance, like investment banking, private equity, hedge fund, private debt firms, venture capital, and those sort of spaces, which I'm still learning about, which I want to learn about. And I think this would be like a great way to create that awareness among students and young professionals, or even like women in general don't know of. Or know very little of. So that I feel is the starting place of making those numbers a bit better.
I feel like you're speaking to your right demographic over here.
Totally.
I don't want to speak for you, Sky, but you saying like hedge fund and all of these things. And I'm like, I've heard that. I think Wolf of Wall Street, they talk about that. That's the most that I've experienced it. I wouldn't even know where to go to find the Coles Notes introductory information on this type of stuff. I mean, I'm sure I could find it, but
and just the fact that you dove into, or you're planning to dive into those areas of finance that are very underrepresented. Women are very underrepresented is huge, because if it was just like banking, or banking's great, not wrong, but like women, I think that women are actually like the majority in that sector. So which is great, but it's such a unique and untapped area that I think we really, and even not even just students, but us, I want to know about that. I'm very excited for this.
And I think too, the salary ranges are a lot higher.
Oh yeah.
Right? Which I think is also inspired. Well, it is, right? Like as soon as you get in, you're making a lot more than you might, as like a teller, where you might start off in banking.
For
right?
sure.
So
the possibilities are endless.
So
that's what got me in.
That's awesome. What is your goal career?
Well, I do want to become a CEO of a Fortune 500, but that's like a very far off dream. The nearest that I can see myself is maybe in roles like investment banker or like a venture capitalist and those sort of spaces, but that is going to take a lot of time, but I see myself there heading on.
Good for you.
That's a great
You're gonna do
space
it.
to see yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Pal, have you encountered any specific instances of bias or discrimination in your academic career in finance? And how have you navigated them?
Well, I'm just still starting out here in Canada and university. I have not yet encountered a very strong discrimination due to my gender, but I can certainly sense a lot of opportunities that are sidelined because of that, considering that it can be too strenuous for you, or maybe you're not yet ready. I'm like, why not? If you can, like, okay. So there has been certain instances where I have not been given opportunities because of maybe just how insufficient I could be in those spaces. So there has been a little bit of that here and there, but yeah, there's not much to talk about it because it's very, very subtle, and it's only when you can overlook that and move ahead is when you are like, okay, maybe we can work around that. And navigating would just be just being aware of how it is actually there, and it's not all in your mind, which we usually always justify, like, no,
Totally.
it's all in your mind.
Yeah.
Maybe you're just overthinking,
Yeah.
but maybe it actually is there, you're just not seeing it.
Yeah.
Those are microaggressions, textbook.
Yeah.
So what do you usually do? Like when those things happen or have happened to you, what's your response?
So I'm a very soft person in general. I generally don't tend to get angry easily, and that is like an emotion that I'm still working around. So when I see happening to myself, I just try to calm down. I assess the situation. I see what were the triggers, or like what were the situations or stimuli that caused those responses from the opposite side. And I just like think deeply about it, and I'm like, okay, maybe what is there that I can do on the other side to make it better. Confrontation is not the best way to deal with it because that's not how it goes, but something to consider is just being calm about it, assess the situation, and just work around it in your mind.
I think that's like such a typical, like when you're being bullied in school and like your mom tells you, but they're like, it's often because people are jealous or because they are intimidated by you or your thoughts or your ideas or whatever it is. And so like, I feel like once you get over the fact of like, this is what I've been hearing my whole life, like, thanks mom, but like, thanks mom, because that it is true. Like so often that people get intimidated and so they want to bring you down in order to lift themselves up. And that's not how it goes.
But there are other ways also. Like I also have strong women around me that I can talk to, which I always usually do. That the first thing that I talk a lot. So every time I go through certain emotions or these situations, I always tend to talk to my friends from in Canada, in India, and anywhere who I'm close to. That, you know, I think this happened. I don't know what to do. And they're like, okay, why did you feel this way? And just the constant feedback. And that I think makes me feel better. And I'm like, okay, let's just put your head down, do the work that you need to do, and move on.
So how do you think then that women in finance and equity can mitigate or address some of these kind of unconscious biases and things that you've experienced?
I think talking about it in a much more wider space and something under a label or like a structured program would get the conversation going and creating just more awareness in general. I think when we talk about a certain topic or a certain situation, the more we talk about it, the more people are aware of it. And then slowly it gets better. That's what I think.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always noticed. It's about everything. Nothing can be erased off overnight. It just gets reduced. For example, even like poverty and inflation just can't go like that. It can just be worked around, and it can only be lessened. It cannot vanish.
Right. No, that
Totally.
makes very good point.
Well, and you're building your power of influence, right? So you're going to be meeting all of these, you're pairing students with professionals and meeting everyone's kind of building their network. So all of you together, the knowledge that you have will be able to combat so many of these unconscious biases. It's like, oh, let me call up my friend at the venture capital firm and let me ask them if they can help me with this project, Mr. Whoever told me I couldn't do it. Right?
Wife is building up your luck surface area.
Yes. There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. Diana, we talked earlier about the broken rung that exists for women in finance industry. So the broken rung, I'll just say it again, is really that gap or the barrier from moving into kind of entry level roles in the financial world into those leadership, more senior level roles. And where a lot of women can't broach that gap, can't go over that rung that's broken. So how have you navigated this? Because you're obviously in a leadership role currently, senior level role. So how have you navigated that broken rung?
I think earlier asked Pal like exactly what she wants to do, and she knew, you know, and I think actually like getting very clear on what it is that you want to achieve and then going for it. And what that looks like is, you know, whatever opportunity comes your way where you can apply yourself, take on an extracurricular or take an extra course that's offered. Have you guys ever read the book Impact Players? It's so good. I can't remember who it's by, but it's essentially just like it talks about thinking one step ahead and like what your boss might want from you rather than being told like this is what I want from you, right? So that idea, just kind of looking ahead at what problem might you be able to solve before it kind of arises. And then also to Pal's point, like that mentorship piece, like Pal mentioned her board of directors, and now I call everybody my board of directors, but building up those people that you can go to for different kind of questions.
Yeah. Okay, wait, sorry. What is a board of director, Pal? Like, I'm on a board of directors for some nonprofits, but like, I don't think that's what you're talking about.
We discussed, I think, in the context of just reaching out to people for specific reasons that we have. And I call it like the secret board of directors that we all have in our mind for certain things that we want to access. For example, I know whom to reach out to if I want a fashion advice. I know whom to reach out if I want a life advice or a career advice. So it's like a secret board of directors that you have in your mind.
I love that.
Love it. I agree.
I'm also going to be using that. I have so many people on my board of directors right now.
To that, you know, getting that strong mentorship and people to kind of encourage you to go for it. And I think as women, we often don't. I think this is like statistically proven that women will wait to have 100% of the qualifications of the job posting, and men will have like 60 and be like, "Oh, I'm a great fit for this." So I think it's maybe applying before you're maybe ready, and if you do end up getting that job, then you just have to work your butt off and learn what you don't know and get on board and just do it.
I mean, I feel like if any young person is also listening or like anyone who's trying to like needing to apply for a job, the job descriptions are the hope and dream, and like maybe there's a unicorn out there that has like 27 years of experience
and a
master's, like really specific thing, and like like a PhD, but that never actually happens. So apply for the job. You know that you're qualified. It's just don't wait. But in follow up to that, could you discuss then the importance of mentorship and like sponsorship programs within either like your specific sector or just like overall career advancement for women in finance specifically?
Totally. I think there probably isn't enough. I think for women in finance, at least. And I think as like professional women now, like in finance, and I think this has come out of our working with Pal and you ladies as well. But I feel like now we have a duty to do more, to attract more people, to, you know, open up this line of conversation. But as far as mentorship, like I can't speak highly enough of the idea of mentorship and just working with Pal and the things that I've learned from her that I just like it broadened my perspective and changed it in a way that I maybe wouldn't have thought of in the past. So absolutely.
The beauty of the intergenerational mentorship as well.
I read a stat the other day that actually those who participate in mentorship programs, either the mentee or the mentor, are more likely to get promoted. So there you go. That might just be that broken rung magic bullet for you to move up in the world.
There you go.
Fortune 500.
Here she comes.
Talking more about sponsorship and like those sort of settings where you have a mentor, I think it's not just like the professional mentorship that one has access to, but it's also just knowing that, okay, you have someone at the back standing, backing up. Like if everybody's not there, that one person is cheering for you. Go for it, go for it. I think that also is a great thing, especially being in your and you for Champions of Change Club's mentorship program of She's Here. It was a great opportunity to at least connect with someone like her who was so supportive, and you just learn a lot of things beyond your professional goals.
Yeah, it's meeting people and having them on your secret board of directors. But I was just reading, I think it's some inspirational quote, and I don't know who said it, but like, people who will say your name in a room full of opportunity. And I can already name off like so many people in my head of who will say that, and it is people in that kind of like informal mentorship that I've met them somehow. And so great point.
So what's going to happen happen next? Have you thought about after the program begins, what you will do to keep the interest and keep the engagement with those students who are involved and the professionals who are involved in the program?
I think since we were discussing about a tentative panel discussion to be set up, thereafter we were thinking of just making regular communication with the members involved as well as participants and industry professionals to keep the connection together and to also see potential opportunities and see what other events and things like that we can discuss which is of interest to everyone. So that was something that we were discussing and looking into of how the program could move ahead, I think.
So obviously women as a whole sector is really, really important. But so often on this podcast and just in our lives, we talk about like all the different intersections that exist for women as well. And I mean, you're a very good example of that intersection. You're a woman of color. So like that's a very specific, diverse group of people. So how are you going to ensure diversity and inclusivity within the WIFE program, both in terms of like the participants and speakers, and I think just feeling welcome and it's for a safe place for all women to come?
So Dajana and I discussed about this, and I think how we define this problem statement would be just making sure that we welcome folks from all walks of life, different stories, different experiences, and just ensuring that we tap on to women who are already want to or have been in those situations and have interesting stories to say or have experiences from different backgrounds, be it country, culture, work experience, education, anything. A story is a story and every story is unique. So I think that is how Dajana and I define diversity and inclusion, is just being open to all women from all walks of life.
I think that's all you can really do is just like create a safe space. And I mean, as things come up, you can address them, but just about creating the atmosphere that it's safe and inclusive.
Totally. Yeah. So there's this line in Hindi. So Hindi is a common language in India. So I'm going to say that phrase in Hindi and then I'll translate in English. The Hindi statement for all the Hindi speaking listeners, it's called "Aurat hi aurat ki dushman hoti hai," which means it's said that a woman is a woman's enemy. Literally, it means. So it's often like, that's how we often think, right? Like when we discussed about how the biggest barrier could be the women in top. And that is a very common line that is spoken in Hindi is like, you know, if two women are involved in a setting like work or profession, they are always going to fight against each other for a spot. So that is also one of the problem statements, I think, around this program that we can work on, is making sure that everyone has a space or a place to talk about their stories. And that's how diversity and inclusion could be ensured.
Whoa. I feel like just even like the cultural aspects of understanding those barriers too. And that, I mean, I don't know, like obviously we're so self-centered in North America. We're like, the world revolves around us and our thoughts. But the fact that that's just such a huge issue, obviously everywhere. And so like, how do you combat that and make it inclusive and safe? Don't know. But you're going to try. Yes. You're going to do your best and you're going to do a great job at it.
So last question, and this ties into being inclusive. This is for Dajana, how can men in leadership positions actually contribute to promoting gender equity and inclusivity within the financial industry for women and for all people?
I think one of the cool things that our previous CEO did, he had CEO for a day. So and there was so many women that would go, and it was such a cool way to build organic kind of mentorship and like lying to him. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the CEO, right? It could be, but I think, you know, if there's men in senior positions that can take younger women entering that workforce under their wing and provide some of that mentorship, that's so valuable. I've been very fortunate. I've had really amazing male leaders who have kept me engaged, and even now I'm on both of my maternity leaves, separate leaders, but both times have been, you know, nothing short of amazing. That has helped me also know, like, as a woman on maternity leave, that they haven't just forgotten about me and written me off. Like, I'm still a part of the conversation and engaged and involved. So, and again, I know every woman doesn't necessarily want this, and that's
your choice, though.
Your choice, yeah. And I think it's really cool that they kind of personalize that experience. So getting to know your employee and what their needs and wants and desires are for their career, I think, you know, whatever the gender, obviously goes a long way, but especially for women, especially in a career interruption.
Well, we're going to need those male leaders, especially in the financial industry where it's so male dominated. Like we need them to mentor and support and sponsor young girls, because that's what the future is going to be.
Yeah. Well, and that's like fighting anything, is that you need allies in the fight against whatever sexism, racism, any isms that it is. And so you need those allies. So we need to engage men, and you need to engage, kind of everyone in these conversations to make sure that it's equitable and diverse and inclusive. And
I've always had my father not make me feel like I'm just his daughter and we don't have a son or anything like that, even though like that's a very big thing in India, is like everyone wants to have at least one son who could take over the business and things like that. My father never made me feel like that, so I've always had the notion of assuming men are nice, or in that sort of a context that no, they're always there, because I've seen my father that way. So of course having those that sort of a support from men is very, very essential, because I believe that, for example, today, now that I'm here to record this podcast, I have 2 of my roommates who are male are cooking the dinner for me. So
takes a village.
Super grateful to them for always being there. So I'm not able to do as much as I am able to do because of my roommates who are at home. So definitely something to also consider, that no, we do not hate you, we just we are all in this together.
100%.
Is the idea.
Yeah, we need each other.
Yeah, this is not the man hating podcast, although sometimes I know it sounds like it can be, but it's not. I promise it's not. Well, thank you so much, Pall and Dajana. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear more about your project, about your mentorship, and kind of how you've worked together. And I know that you will continue to work together and you will continue to support each other. That's what this is all about.
I love those gals.
Me too.
I'm so excited for this event, and clearly it is very needed based on the stats we chatted about earlier. Oh,
I know. There's a lot of work to do, but I think that having these conversations and talking about it and making it obviously more open and acceptable and available and all that information is going to make a huge impact.
Huge.
So the question then is, what can financial service industries do to improve gender equality and encourage the mending of this so-called broken rung, quote unquote? There are regions and countries around the world that have made some good strides in terms of gender equity. So for example, in the UK banking sector, the proportion of women CEOs rose to 9.7% in 2020 from just 1.7% in 2001. While that's great news taken as a whole, many countries remain far from that 30% threshold, most often considered the tipping point for driving real change across an organization.
Interesting.
There are also multiple initiatives, including the Women in Finance Charter, the Hampton-Alexander Review, and the Social Mobility Employer Index that are underway to build and retain diverse talent across the industry. Based on lessons learned from around the world, where higher proportions of women are thriving in leadership roles, we should consider addressing persistent challenges such as childcare needs and remote work options, both amplified during the pandemic. And again, not just something that's in the financial sector, but something that I hear across the board.
Yeah.
The next is ensuring that financial sector leaders offer continued support through sponsorship, mentorship, and allyship programs for women at all levels. Again, not just financial sector alone, but every sector. The last is evaluating and refining succession planning and promotion practices to ensure each open position is pulling from a diverse slate of candidates. This can help build a diverse pipeline of future leaders.
Can I just add one?
Yeah.
I feel like this came to my mind, but let's like based on the stereotypes that we chatted about at the beginning that are very widespread, especially probably even more in the financial world. Yeah. Let's get some unconscious bias training and some microaggression training in the financial world and really in the world in general, all across all industries, but specifically in this world, because I feel like it's more perpetuated and ingrained when you're working in that world where you're like, oh, they can't be the CEO, they can't be the managing partner, whatever it is. So I feel like that industry needs some heavy training in that area. And
that training would also even help people who have those like limiting beliefs or that self-fulfilling prophecy of like, once you actually put a conscious thought to it and you realize that that is something that you're even putting on yourself, then you can address it and reduce it. So overall, we heard many times this episode that it is a very vicious cycle of women in this financial industry. However, it can be a virtuous cycle. The more women there are in leadership positions, the more there will be going forward. According to the research that we've touched on earlier, it's been shown that for each woman added to the C-suite, the number of women added to senior leadership roles increases 2 to even 5-fold. But this can only happen when financial institutions continue to build on recent successes and partake in the lessons learned. Period. Point blank. That's it.
Signed, sealed, delivered.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today as we confronted these terrifying but real statistics impacting women and girls. Please share this episode, rate, subscribe wherever you're listening, and stay tuned for more ways to make a positive impact. Together, we can make the world less scary for women and girls.
Follow us on Instagram at RaiseHER Co and at scaries.podcast and on TikTok at RaiseHER Co. Remember, change starts with awareness and action, which we are doing here today. Thank you for being a part of the Scaries community and making this world a little less scary to exist as a woman. Bye.